The last time a vice president from the US visited Hungary was 35 years ago, and we haven't had such a high ranked American dignitary in Hungary for 20 years. And 20 years, that's quite a long period of time.
As the political winds sweep across the European continent in mid-April 2026, the European Union finds itself at a pivotal crossroads, where historic domestic shifts, escalating global crises, and the relentless pursuit of strategic autonomy are reshaping the very foundations of its unity and influence. In Budapest, the echoes of a monumental electoral victory still reverberate through the halls of Parliament and along the banks of the Danube, marking the end of an era that had long tested the patience and cohesion of the bloc. Viktor Orban, the veteran prime minister whose 16-year grip on power had come to symbolize defiance against Brussels on issues ranging from rule of law to foreign policy alignment, has conceded defeat in a landslide that few predicted with such clarity just months ago. Péter Magyar, the 45-year-old former insider turned reformer leading the centre-right TISA party, has secured an extraordinary 138 seats in the 199-member National Assembly, granting his movement a supermajority that promises not just governance, but a profound constitutional overhaul aimed at restoring democratic standards and anchoring Hungary firmly back within the European fold. Orban's graceful acknowledgement of the results, congratulating Magyar and stepping aside as a caretaker until the new parliament convenes by early May, underscores a rare moment of national consensus in a country long divided. For the EU, this is more than a national footnote. It is a seismic realignment that removes one of the bloc's most persistent internal obstacles, opening doors to unblocked funds, smoother decision-making, and renewed momentum on critical files like Ukraine support. Magyar wasted no time outlining his vision in the immediate aftermath, emphasizing a four-point plan to secure the release of over 17 billion euros in frozen EU cohesion funds from the 27 billion allocated to Hungary. Funds that had been withheld amid concerns over judicial independence and corruption safeguards. In active negotiations already underway with Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, the incoming government signals a willingness to align on everything from migration policy to defence procurement under the SAFE programme, potentially unlocking billions more for joint European initiatives. Hungarian voters, with turnout exceeding 79%, delivered a clear message of hope and fatigue with isolationism, as Magyar framed his campaign around reclaiming the homeland for a pro-European future. Leaders across the EU responded with unbridled jubilation. Von der Leyen herself declared that Hungary has chosen Europe, while Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk hailed the return of a key partner with the rallying cry, "Hungary, Poland, Europe, back together," even invoking anti-Russian sentiments that had been sidelined under Orban. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez echoed the sentiment, proclaiming a victory for European values, as did counterparts from France, Denmark, Romania, and beyond. This collective sigh of relief in Brussels and national capitals stems from the realization that Hungary's shift could pave the way for qualified majority voting in foreign affairs, reducing the veto threats that had paralyzed consensus on sanctions, aid packages, and enlargement. No longer will Budapest stand as a potential Trojan horse for external influences. Instead, it positions itself as a constructive player, eager to engage in high-stakes talks with the Commission delegation that visited just days before the vote, focusing on drawing down remaining funds before August deadlines. Yet, this domestic triumph in Hungary unfolds against a backdrop of urgent external pressures that demand the EU's immediate attention and collective resolve. Just days from now, on April 21st, foreign ministers will convene in Luxembourg for the Foreign Affairs Council, chaired by High Representative Kaja Kallas, where the agenda is dominated by Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine and the rapidly deteriorating situation in the Middle East. An informal video conference with Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha will underscore the bloc's unwavering commitment to Kyiv, even as the conflict grinds on into its fourth year, with Hungary's new leadership poised to bolster rather than block military and financial assistance. The discussions will extend to the war in Iran and its ripple effects across the region, including an exchange with Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, highlighting how interconnected global instabilities have become. The Middle East crisis, now in its 44th day, has delivered a punishing economic blow to Europe, one that Commission President von der Leyen has described with stark precision. the EU's fossil fuel import bill has surged by more than €22 billion in that short span alone, with not a single additional molecule of energy delivered to offset the spike. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz has sent shockwaves through energy markets, driving up prices at gas stations, in supermarkets, and on household bills across member states. Diplomats in Brussels warn of two scenarios: one of prolonged supply shocks, forcing demand destruction through reduced consumption and industrial slowdowns, and another where a ceasefire might ease pressures within months but leave lasting scars on supply chains. For energy-dependent nations like Italy and parts of Central Europe, the vulnerability is acute, reviving memories of the 2021 to 2022 gas crisis triggered by Russia's actions, while nuclear-heavy France and renewables-forward Nordic countries fare somewhat better but still feel the inflationary pinch. In response, von der Leyen has called for accelerated diversification, spotlighting small modular reactors and clean tech leadership as pathways to resilience, while urging a broader rethink of the energy union to phase out fossil subsidies and fortify against hybrid threats. This energy shock arrives at a moment when the EU is already recalibrating its foreign policy toward greater realism and interest-driven pragmatism, as von der Leyen articulated in recent addresses to ambassadors. The old rules-based order, once a reliable shield, can no longer be taken for granted amid shifting transatlantic dynamics and rising multipolarity. With the United States navigating its own priorities under the Trump administration, Europe is compelled to dream bigger on security and technology independence, forging coalitions that transcend traditional alliances. Pedro Sanchez's recent push for an anti-Trump alignment on shared values reflects this emerging assertiveness, as does the far-right's Milan rally on immigration and security, signaling internal debates that Hungary's result may help moderate. The bloc's strategic choices in 2026 are stark. Deepen integration to close defense capability gaps, advance the next multi-annual financial framework for 2028 to 2034 with democratic oversight intact, and navigate the next long-term budget amid competing demands for climate action, competitiveness, and enlargement. Enlargement remains a beacon of hope and a strategic imperative, with Ukraine and Moldova making tangible strides toward membership that could redefine Europe's geopolitical footprint. Informal openings of all accession chapters for both nations mark a quiet but significant breakthrough, as the Commission eyes completion of negotiations by 2027 for Moldova and accelerated timelines for Ukraine despite the war's toll. Georgia's candidate status lingers amid domestic backsliding and protests, a reminder that the process demands rigorous reforms, but the momentum from Kyiv's resilience inspires the entire neighbourhood. These developments test the EU's capacity to absorb new members while upholding standards, especially as reconstruction aid and security guarantees intertwine with accession talks. The informal EU leaders meeting, slated for April 23rd to 24th in Cyprus, followed by the June summit, will likely amplify these discussions, with Antonio Costa's European Council presidency steering debates on how to sustain unity amid fatigue and external meddling. Beneath these headlines lies a deeper transformation in EU politics, one driven by the need for strategic choices in an era of normalized confrontation and economic fragilities. The Recovery and Resilience Facility's final milestones in 2026 offer lessons on implementation and reform, while artificial intelligence's impact on the digital single market, startup potential, and irregular migration pressures demand innovative responses. Climate policy, though challenged by short-term energy woes, positions the Green Deal as a tool for competitiveness and freedom, with revised national targets and carbon market updates on the horizon. Housing initiatives, including short-term rentals regulations and energy-efficient construction acts, aim to boost jobs and security in sustainable building. Defence emerges as a cornerstone, with calls for advanced technologies, better coordination, and increased spending to safeguard against hybrid threats and border instabilities. Internal fragmentation persists as far-right gains in some member states contrast with Hungary's pivot, yet the overall trajectory points toward resilience rather than decline. As April unfolds, the EU stands not as a bystander to global upheaval, but as an active architect of its destiny. The Hungarian breakthrough injects fresh optimism, proving that democratic renewal can realign even the most skeptical partners toward collective strength. The Middle East's energy tremors, while painful, underscore the urgency of autonomy, pushing leaders to translate economic heft into geopolitical leverage. Upcoming councils and summits will test this resolve, from unblocking funds and advancing Ukraine's path to debating Middle East ceasefires and Hormuz reopenings.